Translation. Alas, how strange it is that we are preparing to commit greatly sinful acts, driven by the desire to enjoy royal happiness. We are intent on killing our own kinsmen. Please repeat after me. Alas, how strange it is.
Alas, how strange it is
that we are preparing to commit greatly sinful acts.
That we are preparing to commit greatly sinful acts.
Driven by the desire to enjoy royal happiness.
Driven by the desire to enjoy royal happiness.
We are intent on killing our own kinsmen.
We are intent on killing our own kinsmen.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody. Okay, and I will take a look at the chat in case anybody needs to send me a note. And I'll also speak up so you can hear me. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Driven by selfish motives, one may be inclined to such sinful acts as the killing of one's own brother, father, or mother. There are many such instances in the history of the world. But Arjuna, being a saintly devotee of the Lord, is always conscious of moral principles and therefore takes care to avoid such activities. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Oh, let's see, who's trying to get in here? Sorry, just one moment, Prabhu. I have to see. Here we go. Okay. So, you know what? Now I'm realizing that you probably can't see anything that it says Padma Purana, but in very small type. It says, this is the verse that was quoted today, but from the Padma Purana, actually originally was spoken by Lord Ram and appeared first in Valmiki's Ramayana, but the verse is, Ramante Yogino Nanante Satchid Atmani, Satchananda Chiratmani Iti Rama Padena Shau Padang Brahma Ididiyate. The mystics derive unlimited transcendental pleasure from the absolute truth, and therefore the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, is known as Rama. So Rama is another name for Krishna. Just as we learned today, Balaram, one who's full of spiritual strength or full of spiritual pleasure. So the yogis, one who's endeavoring for spiritual life, he approaches the Supreme, who is the source of all spiritual pleasure. So a transcendentalist derives this kind of pleasure, and even the aspiring transcendentalists know it. So therefore, Arjuna is asking he's making a very pertinent point. So we go to the next slide. Come on. There we go. Okay, so in this verse, you know, with Sanskrit, a lot of times you'll begin at the end of the verse in order to understand it in an English context. So he says, Yad Raja Sukha Lobena. Raja refers to royalty. Sukha means happiness. And Loba means intense, uncontrollable greed, something you just have to have no matter what the consequences are now or in the future. So what Arjuna says is, Yad Raja Sukha Lobena. Simply for royal happiness, we are going to perform sinful activities, greatly sinful acts. So he's surprised by this. Hantum Swajanam Udyata. So hantum is to kill, and Swajanam refers to not only kill others, but kill Swajanam. That means very close family members. They're our own people, our own kind, people that we've known throughout our lives, that we have love and respect for. This is greatly sinful. And the reason why we're doing it, hantum swajanam unyata, is because of the desire for royal happiness. So the reason why we just gave the previous verse, Ramante Yogino Nanante, is because Arjuna, being a self-realized soul, being a saintly devotee of the Lord of the highest caliber, he certainly knows this. He has no desire for royal happiness, yet he's astonished that he's in a situation where for royal happiness he's going to perform all kinds of sinful activities. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is pointing out that people are willing to perform any kind of abominable acts in order to gratify their senses, even kill family members, mothers, fathers, brothers, sons. So what I did is I picked out a few examples throughout history, because in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says that history is replete with all kinds of different examples of how this kind of thing goes on. So just bear with me. I have about 3 examples that I'm going to that I looked up. First one is a empress of ancient Rome. Her name was Lavidia. She was notorious for how ruthless she was. She married someone that was in a high position, close to high officials, and divorced that person simply to get closer to the then emperor of the Roman Empire. And once she was in that position, she stopped at nothing in order to secure her position of becoming the next empress. So one of the things that she did, for instance, was to murder one of the nephews of Augustus. She poisoned him when they were the poor fellow was visiting the palace. Later on, she plotted to have the son of the emperor, Octavian, framed and then later on murdered. And then finally, towards the end of, when they were quite old, Octavian, or Augustus Caesar, became suspicious of her. And so he changed his will in favor of his oldest adopted son, who was this, you see here, it says here, Posthumous, that was his name. So she had it arranged that he would be killed, and then changed the will, and then proceeded to poison Augustus Caesar. At least that's what scholars have recorded. So, Roman Empire. Now, let's go to another notorious woman. Whoops, I went too far. This is the Empress of the Zhou Dynasty. She was the first Empress of China, and she was actually a concubine. The Emperor had 2 wives, but could not bear him a son, so he became attached to this empress, or rather, this concubine, and later on married her, and then she got power of the dynasty, and then when he died, she became the next emperor. And the way she became an empress is as soon as she had the emperor Zhao in her clutches, she made him execute the 2 queens that she had, and he just gave her over to this woman and said, you can do what you like with them. So what she did is she cut off the limbs, the hands and the feet, and stuck them in a vat of oil so that they could suffer over many days. Then the queens cursed her that we will come back as cats and haunt you. So she was so afraid after that that she had all the cats in the dynasty killed. So here's one more example. This is the Ottoman dynasty. The Turks, they were notorious because for 600 years they ruled the Ottoman Empire after conquering Constantinople, they had a vast tract of land, and the way Sultan succession would be enacted is that from the first Sultan, Osman, his son killed all his brothers and other siblings, and then from that he started just a tradition where whenever a Sultan took power, usually it was the oldest son, but sometimes not. Sometimes the younger sons, they would vie for position, and as soon as they would become Sultan, they would annihilate, they would kill all the other contenders for the thrones. And as you know, sultans, they had these harems where sometimes they had hundreds of concubines. They were not actually considered wives, but they were simply producing sons, heirs for the throne. So as soon as one sultan would take over, he would kill all of his brothers. And some of them would be quite young. After they would take power, the next day, coming out of the palace, you would see these small coffins because some of them were quite young children. And that went on for almost 600 years. So there's an example, and then from the Bhagavatam, my last example, that Chitraketu, he had, God, how many was it? I always forget. Anyway, many thousands, I think like 100,000 wives. But somehow or other, due to his karma, he could not produce an heir from any one of them. No male issues. So he was benedicted by Narada and Angira Muni that he would have a son, but they warned him that the son should be named Harsha Shoka. Harsha Shoka means happiness and distress. So what had happened was that the queen that gave birth to this son, being benedicted by the sages, by Narada and Angira, that became the favorite queen, and the king, Chitraketu, showed all attention to her, neglecting all the other hundreds of thousands, or however many it was, wives. And so they became envious about all the attention that was being, and love that was being lavished on this child, and they decided to kill him. So they gave this boy poison, and he died. Later on, the boy was, the spirit soul was called back to speak instructions to Maharaj Chitraketu. So there's one example from the Bhagavatam, and I just gave many examples throughout history. We could probably spend hours just enumerating all the abominable activities that go on simply for royal happiness. That's the point. So let's go to the next slide. So in this verse, Arjuna begins by saying, Aho. Aho means alas, or it means an expression of great surprise. Aho bhata mahat papam. How is it possible that we are prepared to perform greatly sinful acts simply for royal happiness? Kartum vyavastita vayam. Vyavastita, that means when you're situated very firmly. It's like a tree, when it spreads its roots, you cannot pull it out, even if it's a small sapling. At least I can. What to speak of a full-grown tree. So vyavastita means when you have decided on something very, very strongly, it can't be moved. So kartum vyavastita vayam. He's saying, how is it possible that we are prepared to perform sinful activities? Or in other words, how ironic. Duryodhana and his company are willing to perform all kinds of sinful activities because they have no scruples. They are not pious. But how is it possible that we, understanding the sinful activities, are prepared to perform these kind of activities? So the point behind this verse, although although Arjuna is misled because he's giving his affection for Swajanam. Swajanam means his family members. When in actuality, Krishna will show him later on that it's his desire to set Dharma on the right course, so therefore all of these family members must be killed because it's already their destiny. and also they're going to a better destination. However, Arjuna is giving this argument that is actually very powerful, but Krishna will defeat it and Arjuna will be enlightened in the end. But the point is that we can see the character of Arjuna. Arjuna, he is not interested in royal happiness. That's why he's making the statement, Aho Vata Mahat Papam. How in the world we could perform these kind of activities for such an insignificant thing? Although becoming the emperor of the world for any ordinary person like us would seem like fantastic power and pleasure derived from such. But Arjuna is saying, how is it possible for such an insignificant thing that we're willing to perform all kinds of sinful activities? So that's why Ahovata, he's so surprised, and he's presenting this very powerful argument to Krishna. And then we'll find in the next chapter how Krishna is himself offering his surprise to Arjuna by saying, how is it possible that you're speaking words of wisdom when actually what you're saying an intelligent man never brings up? So right now it is about 6:25, 26. As you know, I like to keep classes on time without having unnecessarily go over. So I'm going to unmute myself. I hope everybody could hear me okay. I'm trying to speak, kind of loud, a little bit unnatural for me. But any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. My question is a simple one. Did Arjuna and all his dealings with Lord Krishna in friendship and everything he was relating in so many ways that he was relating to Lord Krishna up to the battle of Kurukshetra, did Arjuna really understand that Krishna was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or was he just seeing him as a friend? We know that when Lord Krishna displayed his universal form to Arjuna, then I guess, he could then see, that, this is, this is beyond, this is definitely, this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But so did Arjuna know that? Because, but at the same time, we also know that this was Lord Krishna's plan to actually put Arjuna into delusion so that he could speak the Bhagavad Gita. But anyway, I was just wanting to know if you knew if Arjuna, up until that time, did he understand? He was just a friend of Lord Krishna. Did he understand that Lord Krishna was the Supreme Lord?
Yeah, throughout the Bhagavatam and throughout the Mahabharata, we see definitely that Arjuna understands always that his friend is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But our understanding of rasa, or taste, is such that the devotee forgets his majesty, and he is overwhelmed by his friendly relationship with Sthayi Bhava. So the Sthayi Bhava, it overtakes the awe and veneration. But at the same time, Arjuna always knows that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Simply, he becomes so relaxed that he doesn't pay attention to that fact. I suppose it would be similar, just like if you were a family member of President Obama, you would always see him as your father or the husband or whatever, or the child as your parent. Even though you always know in your mind, that, and you're proud of him as being the president, but you relate to him differently. So similarly, Arjuna, we see even in the last chapter 7 that we just read in the Srimad Bhagavatam, he's addressing as the Supreme Personality of Godhead through so many prayers.
Oh, yes.
And then in the Mahabharata, it describes, for instance, in the Rajasuya sacrifice, when Shishupal was blaspheming the Lord, and Bhishma, Sahadev, and Bhima also angry. So, of course, Arjuna was speaking out for the Lord, all of the Pandavas. So they knew who he was, but still, they could only see him as their most intimate friend.
Okay, thank you. That was a really nice practical example that you gave about, President Obama and then his, relatives and children and wife and so forth. So, thank you.
Did you like the slide?
Yes. Yes, very wonderful.
Okay.
Very nice.
There's so many nice pictures on the internet.
Oh, wow. Wonderful.
All right. So, if there's nothing else, I want to wish everybody a happy Balaram's appearance day. Like I said this morning, I thought the lecture Brother Emil gave was the best I've ever heard. Balaram's appearance day. I just talked to Yugla Rasa. She said that Ravinda Truth gave a wonderful lecture in Philadelphia and also in Antica. So, anyway. Wonderful day. All right, Prabhus. Thank you very much for your time. Thank
you.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Glories to Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Ramananda.